Many a tale spinner have spun a web of myth and conjecture about the master of the Spider Throne, but I spin no tales here. I hold the truth about the Whispered One, even as he seeks to obscure it. I have spoken to Vokar the Disobedient, held court with Osterneth the Bronze Lich. Interviewed Mordenkainen and Elminster. I have studied the Book of Vile Darkness and 4 of the Books of the Stilled Tongue. I have deciphered the engravings in the crypts of Cravengast and the runes of Citadel Cavidius. I bring you now the definitive truth of the Lord of the Hand and the Eye, Vecna. The tale of Vecna begins with his mother, Mazell. Mazell was a single mother of Earthflawn descent in the city of Flawn on a realm commonly known as Greyhawk. A member of the lowest social class, Mazell made a living as a hedge witch that had some talent in necromancy. Mazell was also an adherent to Mock Slick, more commonly known as the Serpent, a mysterious entity of great and unknown power. The worshippers of the Serpent were persecuted to the point of near non-existence, so much so that Mazell contended she and her son were the only worshippers left. As such, Mazell taught Vecna all that she knew of magic and the Serpent. Unfortunately, like so many innocents, their otherwise normal lives would be upheaved by nobility. At some point in Vecna's childhood, Mazell provided a chemical abortion to a noble princess. Sadly, the princess's mother misused the abortifacient in haste, and this resulted in the death of the princess. The nobility laid the death at the feet of Mazell, and Vecna would lose his mother to an unjust execution. And as Mazell died, Vecna held witness to the cost of the Serpent. For the Serpent rewards arcane knowledge to their followers in exchange for the consumption of their soul upon death. Now an orphan, Vecna would be pressed into the service of an order of mages, where he would perform menial tasks before becoming a scribe. During this time, Vecna would secretly study the arcane arts from the tomes of the order that had imprisoned him, motivated by his mother's wish for Vecna to become a great mage. At some point, with the grief from the loss of his mother and the hate of the order and the aristocracy festering in his heart, Vecna began hearing a voice. The Serpent was speaking directly to him. Vecna's mother told him that the Serpent spoke only to the great god kings of Earthflawn, which must have filled Vecna with immense pride and conviction. The Serpent encouraged Vecna to seek vengeance on those that had wronged him. When he had learned all that he could from the mage order that forced him into their service, he slew them all. The Serpent urged him to record the deed and any future evil deed or thought. Fulfilling this request, Vecna began to author the Book of Vile Darkness, which would go on to become an infamous artifact that many an evil individual has contributed to. Vecna, likely a young adult at this point, struck out to amass his own power, eventually becoming the ruler of a small kingdom. I struggled to find any information or myth that detailed his rise to power, but it was undoubtedly aided by the Serpent. We do know at some point Vecna gained a significant power base as a conqueror with a kingdom based in the Rushmores that eventually stretched from Sheldamore Valley to near Div, where he ruled from a terrible black tower. No doubt Vecna's victories came in no small part to his mastery of arcane arts. Vecna was capable of destroying entire cities beneath tidal waves of rock and earth, and may have been responsible for an inferno or a negative energy spell that created the Bright Desert. Even by this time, Vecna was infamous for his cruelty, maintaining entire villages to use as subjects and fuel for spells. In one of Vecna's earliest major battles, clerics of Palo ambushed and nearly destroyed him, but Vecna was rescued by the now infamous Acererak. Vecna would discover much later that Acererak orchestrated the whole affair to ingratiate himself with Vecna. This ploy worked, as Vecna allowed Acererak access to some of his deepest secrets stowed away in his hidden libraries. Acererak would go on to serve an apprentice under Vecna for some time, before fleeing and achieving Lichdom himself. Vecna now forever seeks vengeance on Acererak for his manipulation and betrayal, while Acererak attempts to utilize Vecna's artifacts to his own ends. Now a cruel ruler and feared conqueror, Vecna approached the end of his natural lifespan. At some point, Vecna sought to create out of himself a lich. Vecna learned about Lichdom from the Serpent, who must have directed him to Orcus, Demon Lord of Undeath, who taught Vecna the ritual. Though other theories hold that Vecna found the secret of Lichdom by feeding himself souls, or being cursed to undeath by the greater gods. However, the Orcus claim is the strongest, as the Demon King holds some power over all Lich's phylacteries and can destroy them if he wishes. The feeding of souls is likely a part of becoming a lich, or maintaining Lichdom, evidenced by the fact that Acererak harvests souls from his notorious Tomb of Horrors to feed his phylactery. What we do not know is Vecna's exact reasoning for wishing to become a lich. Some claim that the death of his mother was a large motivation for Vecna. Perhaps Vecna's motivation was the cost of the Serpent, for if Vecna died, his soul and all his accumulated knowledge would be passed on to the Serpent. It may even be that the Serpent saw in Vecna his last remaining worshipper, and thus his last remaining hope to be venerated again, or failing that, to ever consume another soul. In any case, a deal was struck with Orcus, and Vecna became an undead mage of even greater power, and the people of Orth would not be saved by the passage of time. In Undeath, Vecna continued his conquering of Orth, ruling from his rotted tower in the Rushmoors. Vecna's realm gained the moniker of the Occluded Empire, evident of Vecna's penchant for obscurity. Somber evidence and the results of grotesque experiments and acts of intense hatred still occupy the Rushmoors, preying upon travelers even as the millennia has passed since the Empire's fall. That eventual fall is rooted in one of Vecna's most loyal subjects, Kas. It is unknown exactly how Kas entered Vecna's service, but we do know the human paladin was there during his earliest campaigns, and endeared himself to Vecna through his might and recklessness, as well as his hypocrisy in insisting on a fair fight before he mercilessly cut down his opponents. Kas rose through the ranks to become the right hand of Vecna and had the honor of leading the conquest of Vecna's birthplace, Fleeth. There, he earned the moniker Bloody-Handed for his brutal treatment of the city's people. Kas became so critical to Vecna's vision that the Archlich preternaturally extended Kas's life through vampirism. Together, Kas and Vecna terrorized the people of Orth for centuries, but after Vecna achieved Lichdom, the Maimed One set his sights on higher power, apotheosis. As Vecna progressed towards his goals, he divested much of his power into his trusted lieutenant and awarded him a sword forged by the Lord of the Rotting Tower himself, simply known as the Sword of Kas. Vecna forged this sword with iron taken from the heart of a frozen star, and with flames stolen from the sun. Vecna did not only forge a mighty sword that made it so no man could withstand Kas. As he spoke the final enchantments over it, he carefully pulled a thread of shadow from his own consciousness and wrapped it around the sword's black blade. With the final enchantment, wherever the sword went, Vecna had an ear. The sword served as a badge of office for Kas, as the words from Kas became as good as words from Vecna himself. Kas became increasingly responsible for the day-to-day operations of the Occluded Empire, and Vecna less and less interested, presumably because he was searching for the key to apotheosis. Soon, Kas's sword began to whisper in the Bloody-Handed's ear, for in putting his own essence into the sword, Vecna made a grave error. The Sword of Kas had its own consciousness, and just like Vecna, its own malice and ambition. When Vecna had gathered the necessary artifacts and ritual pieces to perform a rite that would transform himself into a god, the Sword of Kas instructed the Dread Knight to strike. As the ritual was underway, Kas ambushed Vecna, and an epic battle that would see the destruction of the Rotted Tower and the fall of Vecna's empire would quickly follow. Kas was able to strike great blows against Vecna, severing his left eye and left hand, but the combat ended in a stalemate as they were both seemingly destroyed. The only things left amongst the dust and the rubble of the Rotted Tower were the hand and eye of Vecna and the Sword of Kas. Though it was not the end of Vecna, it was a setback. Vecna's essence drifted through the astral sea, seemingly unable to reform at his phylactery, possibly as a result of the interruption of his apotheosis ritual or the manner in which Kas attacked. With the disappearance of Vecna, his followers continued his legacy, and a cult of fear and reverence sprung up around his legend and deeds. contributed in no small part to his hand and eye making their way across existence and awarding power, though at great cost. In the millennia and centuries since his destruction, Vecna's cult fed him power through worship. Eventually, the cult grew enough in size to award Vecna with demigod status. With this new status, the Whispered One was able to put a plan in motion that would leave himself solely at the top of the great powers. The Vecnan cult had secretly placed 7 magical items in strategic locations. When these items are fully powered, they will cast a mystical web of energy all over Earth, cutting off all other gods from their followers. Only Vecna will receive the adulations of his worshippers. The other gods will weaken and leave a path open for Vecna to rise to the fore. Luckily for the multiverse, the mighty Circle of 8 had received a whisper of something sinister, and Mordenkainen had dispatched 8 mighty mages to investigate. Bigby the Great, Drawmage, Jalarzi Salavarian, Nistul, Ottaluk, Otto, Rari, and Tensor were deployed to investigate and to stop the threat. Of course, a group as powerful and accomplished as thus would stop any threat, but when facing down an avatar of Vecna, the group stood little chance and would see their lives ended in short order. Mordenkainen would then go on to recruit an unknown group of powerful adventurers that would face down Vecna, his cult, and avatar. This group, through might and cunning, made their way through Vecna's cult to the heart of Citadel Cavidius. Along the way, adventurers treat with Kos the Bloody-Handed. Kos, traitorous lieutenant of Vecna, had similarly disappeared in the aftermath of the epic combat with his former lord. However, in a final effort, Vecna cast Kos into a planar gateway, trapping him in Citadel Cavidius before Vecna's physical form was destroyed in turn. In the time since, Kos has become driven by his hate of Vecna and would take all opportunities to destroy or otherwise thwart the Archlich. Thus, Kos lends aid to the adventurers, who even call upon the demigod Ayuz to assist in defeating Vecna. In the end, Vecna's plot is thwarted, and the adventurers halt Vecna's ascension. Vecna and Kos find themselves wading through the mists, and on the other side discover that they are now trapped by the dark powers and the domains of dread. In some cruel twist of fate for the rivals, Vecna and Kos shared a twin domain of dread called the Burning Peaks. Never say the dark powers do not have a sense of humor. On one side sits Tovag, a land of temperate climate where Kos the Destroyer rules and allows some life to thrive in addition to his vampire and undead serfs. On the other side of the mountainous burning peaks, through volcanic ash and perpetual twilight, lay Cavidius, where the mists engross Citadel Cavidius in addition to its master. Life is leached from any who might find themselves in its ashen wastes. Not even magical healing is possible here, and any who perish are raised out of the control of Vecna. Vecna and Kos are aware of one another, but neither can seemingly leave their respective half of the burning peaks. That does not stop them from waging war, however, as both send armies of undead minions on expeditions to the other side, most often to never return. Vecna, realizing his predicament, attempted to take advantage of the situation. Between his cult and the secrets of the serpent, Vecna quickly learned about the dark powers and launched a plan to free himself and even completely rule the demiplane. Vecna knew the presence of Kos was meant to distract him, and while he would not take the bait, he did plan to take advantage of the situation to confront Kos. However, Vecna was unable to enter Tovag himself and destroy Kos with his own hands, as the Dark Powers created the Burning Peaks to be impenetrable to both Dark Lords. The Serpent again whispered power into Vecna's ears, and shown him a way to be reborn in the Tovag domain, bypassing the barrier at the Burning Peaks. From there, Vecna could manage Kos and leverage the demiplane to escape. At once, Vecna's cult did infiltrate Tovag to complete the rite, but they were thwarted, once again, by a mysterious group of adventurers. How many Vecnan plots must have been upended by the mysterious adventurers? Indeed, the multiverse owes a great deal to the mysterious adventuring party in the fight against Vecna, and we will have one more in the wake of Vecna's recent failure. Vecna, as master of secrets and an ever-plotting mastermind, has laid down plan after plan over the millennia. Some we have heard of, many others we have not. One of Vecna's plans to ascend to greater godhood had come to fruition. With the help of the serpent, Vecna did craft 2 magical tablets inscribed with incredibly powerful magic and had them buried at an archaeological site. With the bait set, Vecna wait for the prey to bite. That prey happened to be Ayuz, who seeks ascension himself. There must have been some satisfaction for Vecna that Ayuz fell for his trap given the role that Halffiend had in foiling Vecna's previous plan to ascend that resulted in his trapment in Ravenloft. To Ayuz, the tablets lay out a rite that allows for him to ascend to greater godhood. However, the God of Secrets left out one final piece of the rite, which required a sacrificial demi-power to instigate the spell. Ayuz follows the tablet's trail, and it leads him straight to Vecna's clutches in the Domains of Dread, where Ayuz believes he is casting the spell to ascend. A party of heroes discovers that Ayuz appears to be on the verge of greater apotheosis. In a bid to stop this, the heroes pursue Ayuz through Tuvag Baragu, a mysterious site sacred to vanished Vecna, and into Cavidius. The heroes are surprised when they find out that Ayuz is not at risk for ascension, but Vecna is. Ayuz unknowingly sets himself up as a sacrificial catalyst for Vecna's ascension to greater godhood, and while the heroes are a step behind, they witness Vecna ascend and force himself into Sigil, the City of Doors. Sigil is a supreme planar crossroads, and its underlying structure serves as some sort of keystone for the entire planar hierarchy, which Vecna is seeking to upheave and place himself at the very top. I have spoken to one cager who claimed to be a follower of Ayuz and witnessed their patron be absorbed by Vecna. Ayuz's body starts to burn and his mouth opens and closes in a silent scream. His essence continues to flow into Vecna's empty eye socket, which is now starting to glow with a hellish light like his other eye. Vecna is on the verge of becoming a full god. The transformed Archlich raises his hand in a triumphant gesture, ignoring any attacks leveled against him. The walls of the throne room dissolve into thousands of black birds, their shrieks deafening as they are suddenly blown away by hurricane force winds, tumbling uncontrollably towards storm clouds that fade rapidly into a white mist. You hidden powers of this hell, you can contain me no longer, Vecna roars, his voice thundering against the gale. Your secrets and powers are now mine to command. It'll be I who reshapes all of creation in my own image. Normally, all gods and powers are banned from entering Sigil by the mysterious Lady of Pain. Vecna bypasses the wards and protections placed on Sigil by drawing on knowledge imparted by the serpent and energized by his growing divinity. Vecna contorts the mystery fabric of Ravenloft itself, using it to bridge the gap between the prison plane and the City of Doors. Bypassing wards set by a power equal to the serpent, Vecna the Divine arrives in Sigil despite the ban against gods, which has stood for time immemorial. The Lady of Pain does not sit idly, however, as she did put pressure on Vecna, which prevented him from bringing his full and rising power to bear while he remains in Sigil. The mere presence of Vecna here is a multiversal threat, as the City of Doors does not abide divinity within its borders for an important reason: that the celestial ring beneath the city is the physical manifestation of the multiverse's fulcrum. The torus's nature is such that it cannot abide coexistence with point source divine energy. A god in Sigil disrupts the fulcrum, and thus the entire multiverse. Given enough time, it is conceivable that all planes could be thrown down in rack and ruin, and Vecna aims to leverage this fact to set himself up as a supreme deity of a new multiversal order. Vecna had hunkered down in the Armory district that contained a Church of Vecna, and began the process of shaping the multiverse in his own image and set himself up with a defensive barrier of lethal magic and slod that the armies of Sigil were unable to breach. However, when the mysterious party of heroes that had pursued Vecna arrived, they managed to enter the heart of the Armory. They were able to achieve this by leveraging their possession of the hand and the eye of Vecna. As has been demonstrated at different times, Vecna has a blind spot when it comes to his relics. Anyone that may possess them is simultaneously buffed and vulnerable against Vecna's evil. And thus, the mysterious heroes face down Vecna and eject him from Sigil, with the help of the hand and the eye, and the Sword of Kos. A few accounts say also with the aid of a few unknown demigods that the Lady of Pain allowed entrance into Sigil in this desperate time. In the aftermath, the Lady of Pain attempts to heal any wounds to Sigil and the multiverse. Though the lady is not entirely successful, some godlings claim a time where they were a great power and no longer are. Some outer planes are lost forever, at least one inner plane falls upon the prime material, and some new and unknown realms are created and revealed. Entities and creatures are lost and forgotten, while some new and previously unknown appear. As for Vecna himself, his plot was a half success. The maimed lord was able to maintain some power from his ritual and the absorption of Ayuz. While he did not become the deity above all others, he is left as a lesser deity and free from the Dark Power's clutches. Now for a quick aside that I didn't really know where to fit. but of interest is the topic of Vecna's Phylactery. Orcus possesses power over phylacteries, but this does not appear to extend to Vecna, as the two would grow to become rivals, and Orcus would have disposed of Vecna long ago by destroying his phylactery. Vecna may not have the need of a phylactery as a lesser deity, and or possess some protection against Orcus. If Vecna's phylactery does exist, whether it possesses importance to him now or not, its location would be of interest. A monk who raved ceaselessly within his cell in a madhouse swore to me that Vecna confronted his own death and imprisoned it in a castle on the grey sands of an alien world, where it wails in eternal torment. This statement, told by Vistani, is likely referring to Vecna's phylactery. The extent a lich may go to protect their phylactery, and it possessing a significant place in their own death, could easily be mistaken to the lay people that the lich's own death is being imprisoned. The castle on grey sands of an alien world is vague, but does offer a clue to one of Vecna's strongholds, the Citadel Cavidius. This city dungeon has appeared both in the quasi-elemental plane of Ash and the Domains of Dread, which we covered earlier. Anybody to find their way there would see themselves choked with ash and bereft of life, which would match the grey sands of an alien world. Some cagers claim that the original Citadel Cavidius is older than Vecna himself and contained places that even he would not venture to, and that it has since become occupied by great evil. The veracity of these claims is unknown, but if Vecna did house his phylactery in the original Citadel Cavidius, he may want any and all to avoid the Citadel, and the deepest parts where the phylactery will be hidden. It is currently unknown where the Citadel may have ended up after volatility in the rearrangement of cosmology. With the damage done by Vecna and Sigil, a new era is drawn across the multiverse, what I like to call the Third Era. With Vecna now taking a place in many cultures' pantheons, his cult is stronger, and his appeal is wider than ever. Despite this, or perhaps because of this, direct action by Vecna became nearly non-existent. The cult undoubtedly pursued plans in Vecna's name, and many a story told around the campfire of brave and stout adventurers defeating Vecna's cults would appear, fabricated or otherwise. No major plots of Vecna would rise to the fore, as his plots did in past eras. Some changes in Vecnan cults were notable, as they began to include Neogi and Dark Ones, both evidence that Vecna's influence had spread from Earth to the plane of Shadow, the Astral Sea, and beyond. Vecna even began inspiring those who wished to become a lich, such as the talented Dirac the Eternal, and those that turn away from the deities of nurture, such as Seldara, a drow cleric who turned away from Lolth and towards Vecna. Around this era, I also noted some speculation about the Serpent, one of the more popular theories being that the Serpent is in actuality Asmodeus, who himself is rumored to be a world snake. This theory may have sprouted from the fact that many fiends and half-fiends began to appear more and more in the surface of Vecna. Otherwise, the Third Era would see little impact from Vecna moving into the Fourth and even the Fifth Era, where cosmology would see even more upheaval. Though to say Vecna is inactive would be misleading. Even if I fail to find any direct conflicts where Vecna intervened with an aspect or avatar, Vecna was not idle. Vecna's hand and eye still trawls the multiverse, seeking those to use and corrupt, evidenced by Archon the Cruel's use of the hand in an attempt to free Tiamat and his opposition to Zariel in Avernus. Joining it is the Book of Vile Darkness, and a more recent penning called the Tome of the Stilled Tongue that mortals full of hubris utilize inevitably fall under the influence of the Maimed Lord. Indeed, Vecna maintains power bases and wages unseen wars throughout the multiverse while traveling the Astral Sea, such as Vecna's cultists seeking entrance to the Tower of the Adamantine Mage to garner more secrets, or maintaining a tower in the heart of Pandemonium, where dark angels assault any being that might incidentally stumble upon the secret tower. Vecnan cultists also search the plane of dreams for nuggets of truth. Vecna also has significant sway within the newly minted Shadowfell, as the shadowy and undead creatures that reside there are prone to venerate him, such as in the city of Gloomrot, where the votaries of Vecna perform unspeakable experiments in Vecna's name. Vecna himself will also sometimes walk the plane. Legends say that during one of these jaunts, Vecna taught the Nightwalkers the ritual to create Bodax, and many Nightwalkers opt to align themselves with the Lich God, contributing to his battles in the Shadowfell. One of those battles is against the Raven Queen, whose undyingly loyal Shadar Kai combat any foray by Vecnan forces against the Fortress of Memories. The Raven Queen possesses some power over the dead, though the extent is disputable, and Vecna wishes to know her secrets and the secrets of the souls in her fortress. Kas the Bloody-Handed also resides within the Shadowfell, ruling his vampirocracy, and Vecna continues his fight against the Betrayer. Vecna also counts Orcus among his greatest rivals. Despite Orcus showing Vecna the way to Lichdom, their competing interests in the domain of undeath and the Shadowfell alike keep them at odds. What bloody wars and titanic encounters must have occurred in the Shadowfell through the ages that were never put to parchment. This, my dear listener, is the unabashed truth of Vecna, doubtless and indisputably. Perhaps you can share tales of the Lord of the Hand in the Eye that I may add to my research. Please write me a letter below, and I will see you next time. Wait, stop. There's one more thing. It's the obelisks. The obelisks. I can't believe I didn't see it before. It's so simple. There's one more thing I'm going to share with you. I need to get this message out because they found our hideout and they're not happy we're sharing Vecna secrets with you, so you have to listen up. The Netherese, they had these magical obelisks. These were constructs of immense power that were able to manipulate reality, and the Netherese thought they could use them as a failsafe for if their empire were to ever crumble. Only the Netherese sort of lost them over time. Mysteriously. But it was Vecna. He stole them and he unlocked their secrets, but he didn't stop there. No, Vecna used the obelisks to erase from reality their secrets and their original creators, beings known as the Weavers. Vestiges of how to build the obelisks trickled down to the Netherese, but their obelisks paled in comparison to the original ones built by the Weavers. Listen, you have to stop him. Vecna plans to...